funny thing about life, it never stops talking, does it? The noise, the chaos, the endless chatter of people who think they know what you should do, who you should be, how you should live. But buried underneath all that static, there's something else. A word, a message, a voice that doesn't sound like the rest. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg for attention. It just waits. Waits for you to finally stop running, stop hiding, stop pretending you can't hear it. Right now, that word is reaching for you, not for them, not for anyone else. Just you. Noise hides the real message. That's the trick, isn't it? The world knows if it keeps you busy enough, loud enough, distracted enough, you'll never notice what actually matters. Every second of your life is filled with sounds, screens, conversations, notifications, opinions, endless chatter. People think noise is harmless, but it's not. It's camouflage. It covers up what you were supposed to hear all along. You're not missing the truth because it isn't there. You're missing it because you're drowning in static. Think about it. When was the last time you sat in silence, real silence, and listened? Most people can't even handle 5 minutes without filling the air with music. TV, scrolling, talking, anything to avoid being alone with their thoughts. They think the silence is empty, but it's not. That's where the real voice hides. That's where clarity waits. But you can't hear it, not when the volume of the world is turned all the way up. The noise has one job: keep you numb, keep you blind, keep you chasing what doesn't matter. And the best part? People don't even fight it. They welcome it, they choose it. They carry the noise in their pocket, check it every few seconds, panic when it's not there. They're addicted to the very thing that's stealing from them. They mistake the noise for connection, for importance, for life. But the more you feed on it, the emptier you get, because deep down you know it's hollow. It's a distraction, a cover, a mask over the message you were meant to hear. Noise is clever like that. It itself up as urgency. It convinces you that every little ping, every little update, every little opinion deserves your attention. And while you're busy chasing meaningless things, the meaningful ones pass you by. The conversation you needed to have, the lesson you needed to learn, the whisper you needed to hear, it all gets buried under layers of sound. You keep asking for signs, for answers, for direction, but the truth is, it's already there. You just can't hear it through the clutter. People wonder why they feel lost, broken, restless. It's not because the message isn't reaching them. It's because they're too tuned in to the wrong station. They've trained their ears to catch every lie, every distraction, every scream of the world, but they've gone deaf to the one thing that actually matters. Noise isn't just sound. It's fear, it's insecurity, it's doubt. It's the endless opinions of people who don't even know who they are themselves. And the longer you listen, the further you drift from the truth meant for you. You see it all the time. People running in circles, chasing approval, chasing money, chasing status. They think they're making progress, but they're just running deeper into the noise. They're terrified of slowing down, terrified of stopping, because they know what waits for them in the silence. The truth, and the truth hurts. The truth breaks illusions. The truth shows you who you really are, what you've been ignoring. what you've been pretending not to see. That's why noise is so comfortable. It keeps you safe from reality. But safe isn't the same as alive. Safe isn't the same as free. Noise keeps you trapped in a loop, deaf to the one message that could set you free. That's why it hides the real message, because if you ever stopped and actually heard it, everything would change. You wouldn't need the endless distractions anymore. You wouldn't care about the applause, the likes, the opinions. You'd finally see through it. And once you see through it, the noise loses its power. The message doesn't compete with the noise. It doesn't scream louder. It doesn't fight for your attention. It waits. It waits for you to get tired of the chaos, tired of the distractions, tired of the emptiness. It waits for the moment you finally stop running, sit still, and actually listen. And that's when you realize the truth was never gone, never silent. It was there all along, buried under the noise you chose to believe. Stillness reveals what you need, but people don't like stillness, do they? They're terrified of it. The second things go quiet, the second there's no noise to drown out their thoughts, they start cloning. They call it boredom, they call it emptiness, but really it's exposure. Stillness shows you everything you've been hiding from, everything you've been too busy to face. That's why the world keeps you moving, keeps you running, keeps you spinning on the wheel like some desperate little rat. Because if you ever stopped, really stopped, you'd see things for what they are. And that truth, that's dangerous. In stillness masks for the laughter you force, the smile you wear, the roles you play for everyone else. None of it survives the silence. Because in the quiet, there's no one to impress, no script to follow. It's just you. You and the thoughts you've been trying to bury. That's where you discover what's real. That's where the pain you've been ignoring surfaces. That's where the desires you've been suppressing crawl out of the shadows. Stillness doesn't lie. It doesn't dress things up. It hands you the raw, unfiltered truth you've been avoiding. Most people can't handle that. They say they want answers. They say they want clarity. But when stillness puts it in front of them, they flinch. Because clarity isn't always comforting. Sometimes clarity tells you you're in the wrong place, with the wrong people, living the wrong life. Sometimes clarity shows you that the things you've been chasing don't matter, that the future you've been building is nothing but smoke. And when you see that, you can't unsee it. That's why people run from stillness. It reveals what they already know, but don't want to admit. But here's the thing. Stillness isn't your enemy. It's the mirror you need. You can't heal what you won't face. You can't change what you won't admit. And you can't grow while you're too busy running. Stillness slows everything down long enough for you to see the patterns, the lies, the cycles you've been stuck in. It whispers the truth the noise tries so hard to bury. And the longer you avoid it, the louder the chaos grows. Because deep down, you know, you're ignoring the one thing that could set you free. Look around. People drown themselves in endless motion. They can't sit still without reaching for a screen. They can't walk without headphones in their ears. They can't stand in silence without scrolling through meaningless updates. Because stillness feels unnatural to them. They've trained themselves to equate motion with meaning, distraction with purpose, But none of that gives them what they need. None of it answers the questions eating them alive inside. Stillness does, but they won't go near it because they already suspect the answers will demand change. And change is what terrifies them most. Stillness, though, has a way of forcing itself on you. You can run, you can bury yourself in noise, but eventually life strips it away. The job falls apart, the people leave, the distractions lose their taste, and there you are, still, alone, silent, exposed. Some people break in that moment because they never learned how to face themselves. Others, they rise. They take the silence, the stillness, and they let it reshape them. They use it to see clearly for the first time in their lives. And once you see clearly, you don't go back. You can't. What you need isn't buried in the noise. It's buried in the stillness. The answers you've been chasing, the direction you've been begging for, the truth you've been desperate to hear, it's all there. But you won't find it running from yourself. You won't find it in the endless chaos of the crowd. You'll find it the moment you stop, the moment you sit in the quiet and let the silence speak. That's when the fog lifts. That's when the confusion fades. That's when the real message finally steps out of the shadows and stares you in the face. And not every voice deserves your ear, but people listen anyway. They soak up every opinion, every criticism, every whisper from mouths that were never meant to shape their lives. It's strange, isn't it? You'll ignore your own instincts, your own gut, the quiet pull inside you, just to bow down to the noise of strangers, friends, family, anyone who talks loud enough. And you call it advice, you call it wisdom, you call it guidance. But half the time, it's nothing more than projection. People spitting out their fears, their failures, their insecurities, and you swallow it whole like it's gospel. Voices are everywhere. Some encourage, some manipulate, some poison. And the dangerous part is they don't always sound different. Sometimes the voice that drags you down is disguised as love. Sometimes the voice that chains you up comes wrapped in concern. Don't take risks. Don't try that. Don't dream too big. Sounds like care, doesn't it? But underneath it's fear. Their fear, and they hand it to you like a gift, and you accept it, carry it, live by it, never realizing it was never yours to begin with. The world is full of talkers and empty of listeners. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to leave their fingerprints on your life, but not everyone deserves that power. Not every voice deserves a seat at your table, but you let them in anyway. You replay their words over and over in your head until they drown out your own. You start making choices based on what they'd say, what they'd think, how they'd react, and little by little, you lose yourself. Not because you didn't have a voice, but because you buried it under everyone else's. Think about how many dreams died because someone said it was impossible. How many risks were never taken because someone laughed. How many lives got smaller because someone's opinion weighed more than truth? That's the tragedy. You let the wrong voices decide the size of your life. And most of the time, those voices weren't even right. They weren't wiser, stronger, or smarter. They were just louder, and you gave them authority they didn't earn. Here's the part most people never admit. Sometimes it feels easier to listen to others than to yourself. Because if you fail following their voice, you can blame them. If you fail following your own, You have no one else to blame. That's why people hand over their power so willingly. Responsibility scares them. Accountability scares them. But giving your ear to the wrong voices costs you more than failure. It costs you your identity. You become a puppet, moving to the strings of people who were never meant to hold them. Not every voice deserves your ear. Some voices exist only to test your strength, to see if you'll fold under pressure, if you'll believe their lies over your own truth. And if you're not careful, you will, because lies repeated enough start to feel like truth. Mockery repeated enough starts to sound like reality. Doubt spoken enough becomes your inner dialogue. That's how dangerous the wrong voices are. They don't just talk, they plant seeds. And those seeds grow into chains that hold you down long after the voices are gone. The choice is yours. Whose words get to shape you? Who gets access to your mind, your spirit, your direction? You can't stop the voices from speaking, but you can choose which ones you let in. Some deserve silence. Some deserve to be shut out completely, and some very few deserve your ear because they speak truth, not fear. They speak growth, not limitation. They speak to the best in you, not the weakest. But you'll never know which is which until you start listening less to them and more to yourself. Your life is too short to be directed by every passing opinion, every careless word. Not every voice deserves your ear, because your ear is a doorway. And once something walks through that doorway, it doesn't leave easily. It lingers, it echoes, it shapes. You decide who gets that power. You decide which voices get to stay and which ones you shut out before they poison everything inside you. Truth whispers, distractions scream, and most people fall for the screams every single time. The world knows exactly how to get your attention. Flashing lights, endless notifications, headlines designed to shock you, voices raised just to drown out the silence. It doesn't matter if it's true, it only matters if it's loud. That's how people get fooled. They mistake volume for value. They think if something shouts at them long enough, it must be important. But the truth doesn't play that game. It doesn't shout, it doesn't fight for space, it doesn't need to. The truth doesn't demand your attention. It waits for you to choose to listen. And that's why so many miss it. They're tuned in to everything except the whisper that matters. They scroll until their eyes are numb, binge until their mind is exhausted, fill every gap of silence with some kind of noise, because silence is where truth lives. But truth doesn't scream. It hides in the background, subtle, patient, waiting for you to get tired of the circus. And until you do, you'll keep running in circles, chasing every distraction that promises you clarity, while secretly keeping you blind. The distractions know they know you'll chase approval, so they give you likes, comments, little digital pats on the head. They know you'll chase comfort, so they feed you entertainment, endless streams of it. They know you'll chase fear, so they throw you headlines of disaster and doom. And you bite again and again because screaming feels urgent. Screaming feels alive, but urgency isn't truth. Noise isn't. And the more you consume it, the more deaf you become to the whisper that actually matters. Truth, on the other hand, is inconvenient. Doesn't tell you what you want to hear. It tells you what you need to hear. and it rarely arrives in the middle of chaos. It arrives in the quiet. That's why it whispers. It knows if you really want it, you'll have to stop, shut out the noise, and lean in to hear. It forces you to make a choice. Do you keep chasing the screams that entertain you, or do you sit in silence long enough to hear the whisper that could change everything? Most people choose the screams. They'd rather be comfortable in distraction than uncomfortable in truth, because truth demands something from you. It demands change, honesty, responsibility. Distractions demand nothing. They let you sit still, numb, entertained, never growing, never questioning. That's why they scream so loud. They don't want you to ever notice how empty they really are. But if you've ever had a moment of stillness, you know the difference. You know how the whisper of truth feels. It cuts through the fog, it pierces the lies, it settles deep in your chest in a way no distraction ever could. It doesn't scream because it doesn't need to. Its power isn't in volume, it's in clarity. And once you've heard it, even once, you know the screams were hollow all along. The tragedy is how rare those moments are, because people don't give themselves the chance. They live addicted to the noise, addicted to being pulled in 1,000 directions, addicted to the comfort of never sitting face to face with the truth. They say they want meaning, they say they want purpose, but what they really want is distraction disguised as meaning. They'd rather feel busy than be alive. Truth whispers, distractions scream. That's the game. And every day you decide which one you'll give your ear to. Will you keep falling for the noise that promises everything but delivers nothing? Or will you strip it all away long enough to hear the whisper that was waiting for you the whole time? The whisper doesn't compete, it doesn't chase. It's steady, it's patient. It's been there beneath the screams, waiting for you to finally realize the loudest things in your life are often the least important. Faith grows in uncertainty. That's the part no one likes to admit. People crave control. They want guarantees. They want everything mapped out neatly with no room for error. But life doesn't play by those rules. It throws curveballs. It shakes the ground beneath your feet. It pulls the rug out from under you just when you thought you were safe. And in that chaos, in that fragile space where nothing feels solid, that's where faith is forced to grow. Not when everything is clear, but when everything is blurry. Not when you know, but when you don't. Think about it. If everything made sense, if everything was predictable, you wouldn't need faith at all. You'd just walk a straight line with no doubt, no fear, no risk. Faith is born in the cracks, in the moments where logic runs out, where your strength feels too small, where the answers don't come. That's when faith whispers, trust anyway. Not because it makes sense, not because it's easy, but because it's the only way forward when every other path looks impossible. Uncertainty terrifies people. It makes them feel powerless, exposed, vulnerable, and the first instinct is to run from it, to try and control everything, to chase certainty, like it's the only safe place to stand. But the truth is, certainty is an illusion. The job you thought was secure can vanish overnight. The relationship you thought was unbreakable can crack without warning. The plan you built for years can crumble in seconds. Certainty is fragile, but people cling to it anyway, and the moment it slips, they collapse with it. Faith doesn't collapse. Faith bends, faith stretches, faith holds on when certainty has already broken. That's why it grows in uncertainty. It's forced to. You don't learn to trust when the road is smooth. You learn to trust when the path is dark, when every step feels like it might break you, when you have nothing to lean on except the belief that somehow, some way you'll make it through. That's the soil where faith roots itself. People confuse faith with blind optimism. They think it's about pretending everything will be perfect, ignoring reality, smiling through the storm. But faith isn't ignorance. It isn't delusion. Faith looks the storm straight in the face, feels the fear, acknowledges the chaos, and still says, I'm not giving up here. It's raw, it's gritty, it's not polished or pretty. Faith doesn't erase uncertainty, it thrives in it. It learns to stand in the shaking ground without demanding the shaking to stop. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it's also a gift. It strips away the illusion that you were ever in control in the first place. It forces you to dig deeper, to find strength you didn't know you had, to listen to a voice bigger than your doubts. If life was predictable, you'd never stretch, you'd never risk, you'd never grow. Uncertainty pushes you into places you'd never choose. But in those places, faith is planted. And over time, those seeds grow into something stronger than certainty ever could be. Because certainty can be taken away. Circumstances can change in a heartbeat. But faith, real faith, stays. It doesn't depend on what the world looks like. It doesn't depend on how much sense things make. It doesn't depend on how steady the ground feels. Faith learns to breathe in the unknown, to move in the dark, to stand in the fire. And once you've built that kind of faith, uncertainty stops being your enemy. It becomes the very thing that shaped you. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid uncertainty, but in doing so, they avoid growth. They stay small, they stay safe, they stay in the shallow end, where they can touch the bottom, never realizing that the deep end is where faith teaches you to swim. It's in the uncertainty, in the tension, in the unanswered questions, where you learn what you really believe, what you really trust, what you really stand on. Faith doesn't shrink in that space. It grows. It grows wild, untamed, unshakable, because it knows the one truth certainty could never give you. You were never meant to have it all figured out. You